Hello, and welcome to On the Irregular with me, Java Berry, a podcast where I chat to women from all walks of life about their own unique creative journey, how they got here, how their story has shaped their creative work, what they've learned, what has helped them, and where they plan to go from here. It's an irregular journey for so many of us, and I am delighted to offer a platform to share these fascinating stories and wells of wisdom. This week, I'm chatting to grower and florist Hattie Shackleton of Honor Farm Folk. In our conversation, we touch upon Hattie's experience of working in branding agencies and being a woman in the graphic design industry, then opening up her own shop, Maud's House, in the old market town of Skipton. We talk about what it's like to have several skills and to allow yourself to hone in on what you love, the impact of her dad's passing, and the elitism of the horticulture industry. And most excitingly, we talk about the unusual property Hattie and her family are moving to, where she will expand her flower business and passion for opening up the farm in the future to help make growing more accessible for the local community. Welcome to episode 10 with the endlessly stylish yet permanently down-to-earth Hattie Shackleton.
I'm really looking forward to you just telling me in your own words, like, you know, explaining it more and kind of going more in depth, because like you've done so much, because you're really quite young, aren't you? Like,
I am. I like to keep busy.
Are you even 30? How old are you?
I'll be 32 this year, I think.
God.
Yeah, 32 this year.
You've packed a lot in.
How old are you?
I'm 38. I'll be 39 this year.
You're still spring chicken as well, though. That's not what you were thinking this morning, was it?
Not at all. Okay, well, now that you're here and we've caught up, do you want to tell me a bit more about your background and your family? Because I know that you come from a creative background, don't you? Your dad was a designer.
Yeah. So my dad was a really talented artist. So he was incredibly good at drawing, like a draftsman, and at painting, mainly painting actually. And when he was, I think 16 or 17, he got a scholarship to go down to St. Martin's from Blackburn. So he went to Blackburn College, and they had a really good, and still do have a really good foundation kind of situation there for artists. And so he went to do that when he was like 16, and for whatever reason he got this scholarship. And so when he was 17, he moved down to London.
That's young.
I know, he was really young to go. St. Martin's it didn't have the same title then. It was like London Polytechnic, I think, something like that. So he went there and then kind of continued his career path into becoming a designer. And because he kind of came through the time of when the first Mac computer came out and all that kind of thing. So he bought one like in the early 90s and self-taught himself to be a designer, because there wasn't any courses or anything like that. So he just bought books, taught himself how to use, and he was like one of the only people in Blackburn to have this computer.
Yeah.
So he was mega. He was really good. He was a really good designer. Proper looked up to him. And then I suppose in the last years of his life, he wanted to go back into becoming an artist again, because he kind of lost his way a little bit, like you do, and stopped drawing and painting. And so he was just starting to kind of pick that back up again. He was brilliant.
Wow. So was it? I guess it was something that surrounded you as a child, and did you just naturally veer towards that? It was a natural interest for you.
Yeah. Funnily, like me and my sister are quite different. She's not in any way creative. She's very academic, businesswoman type, whereas I kind of fell into the same remit as my dad, I suppose. And my mum was a civil servant, but she is even still really creative. Like, she likes her interiors and going to exhibitions and music, and reading and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it was a natural. They were both really encouraging with just drawing and
so do you think that it was something that you always knew, you were always clear that you wanted to go into kind of, I guess, aesthetics or visual design or illustration? Because you have so many how do you say it? What's it to your bow? Strings to your bow. That's it. You have so many strings to your bow. Like
Jack of all trade, master of none. It's probably
no, but you know the full quote is, was it Jack of all trades, master of none, but sometimes better than one? Something like
I'll take that.
So, because you went on to study visual arts, design.
Yeah, so it was 100% a mixed bag, and actually it's taken probably until now to really figure out what it is that I enjoy creating. And you just try a bit of everything, don't you? And you can be quite experimental when you're young. So I enjoyed doing everything. I was never that great at painting, so I never really bothered with that. But illustrating and drawing and doing anything with material was kind of what I enjoyed the most. And then the design thing kind of just fell into place, probably more because of my dad's guidance. Like I had that practical knowledge from him how to do that kind of stuff. So that was a kind of an easy thing to lean on for like work, really. That was just more like a practical thing.
Right, okay. So so you knew that you could work for another company, because you started off like what you were working in branding, weren't you?
Yeah, not as a designer. It was I was in like the studio management side of things. I was quite young when I was working in branding agencies. It was I was trying to get away in basically, and I was dating a different designer at the time, not my husband, and he had a connection with the agency I went to work for, and it started off as very much setting up meetings, interviewing designers to come, but because they recognise that I have an eye for things, they kind of trusted me in being able to do that at a young age, I suppose. And then it kind of went on from there. I kind of enjoyed the environment of being in a design agency and being around creative people, but without probably doing the practical work myself, which has always kind of been the case. I've enjoyed the project side of things, but not necessarily the one having to spend 80 hours designing it. I know that sounds a bit fickle, but that's exactly, I flip ideas, as you said, like I've done so many different things. I find it hard to pin myself down to one thing for a long period of time.
That's interesting. So you think that you're more interested in the idea and the concept than the execution? Yeah,
I think so. More art direction, perhaps, and creative direction sort of thing. So I'm now married to a designer it's brilliant. So if you ever have an idea, you can just say, how about we do this?
Yeah.
And he'll just whip it up for me.
Oh, that's handy.
It is very handy. So I can still be creative in lots of different ways, but it's just knowing your strengths, I think. So he's just an incredible designer. Like Johnny, who I'm married to, is an incredible designer, and I can't compete with that. So why would I bother doing it when someone else can do it?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you are very skilled at design as well, though. Because because you're also an illustrator and you design cards, and I've seen your pet commissions are so beautiful.
But it's this thing, and I don't know whether you find it. I know a lot of other friends do, but it's that kind of seeking for perfection in your work. Like I'm never satisfied with my own designs, and that's kind of why I've stopped illustrating. I haven't really, I've done the odd commission just for a bit of extra money in recent years, but I have kind of let that go to one side, because I'm just always trying to better myself, and I don't know whether that's comparison to other illustrators. I'm sure it is, actually. But yeah, I just kind of, I don't know. I've just found other things that I enjoy more, I suppose, than drawing and designing these days.
Yeah, I guess that's it. When you're wealthy in creative skills, you can pick and choose. And just because you're good at something, or others think that you're good at something, doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be what you enjoy and what you choose to dedicate your time doing.
Yeah, definitely. I found it really hard as well, just even sitting down at a so to be working in a studio was quite different, because I wasn't the one sitting down at the desk all day. I was kind of rushing around and project managing and just getting things sorted out. Whereas when I kind of slowed down to then be illustrating or working on projects myself, I just did not like having to sit at a desk for like 10 hours in the day. I felt anxious from it and wanted to get out and go for a walk or just be doing it. It's like this energy to be doing something. It just, I don't feel like it was very good for my brain. Whereas Johnny can sit up there for days. He's in the attic now designing, and he'll be up there till like 11 o'clock tonight quite happily.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because I think I can kind of relate to that, actually. I find it difficult to sit at my desk and just dedicate time to drawing or writing. I love doing it, but I really love just being on my feet and being dynamic. And I think in some ways that's having the shop, like the online shop, that kind of helps me balance those two things out. And I was wondering if that's something that you enjoyed about your shop, Maud's House, which, there's the concept, you're creating a space, you're moving it, it's changing, but there's the physical element to it.
Definitely, it is that evolution of bringing in new creatives and just the all the different hats that you have to wear for having a shop, rather than just the one sole thing. And it's strange, isn't it? I don't know whether it's just as you grow older, you have more responsibilities anyway, so you're kind of divvying up your time and you feel like an internal clock is ticking every time you have a task. Even if you have all day to do the task, you're like, but I need to do something else by 2 o'clock. But you don't some days. But it's that I have always had that feeling that things need to get done. And, if I need to do an illustration, I need to have this illustration done in the next 4 hours. And that's just no way to be. I don't feel like your best ideas come that way. You need to spend time on things, don't you? So having the shop was brilliant, because then all the wonderful things that I wish I could do, I could just get in from other people, like ceramics and clothes and books and illustrations, and just have everything beautiful in one place was a really nice thing to do. It was really hard work and not all that financially rewarding, but it was a really nice thing to do for a period of time.
Yeah, because when was that?
I think we opened it when I was 25, turning 26, so it'll be 2016. And I'd just left working. I'd left working in for a branding agency, which totally turned me off the industry in terms of working within a studio environment, because it was very misogynistic. And it was just not a brilliant experience. I'd gone from working in a really warm and like vibrant, energetic, creative studio, and then being offered a better, well-paid position at this other studio, which is still well known in Leeds. So I went there thinking that this would be like the making of my career, I suppose. And it was just like, I felt like a 1950s secretary. It was just like, I felt every inch of my creativity was just being drained.
Wow.
And I wasn't heard. And it just wasn't a very nice experience. So I was there for 9 months. I wasn't there very long at all. I don't even know how I managed to do 9 months, to be honest. And then one day I just didn't go back. I just thought, I think I tried to negotiate doing part-time, because I hated being in the studio that much, or negotiate working a little bit from home, because this was before working from home was a thing, I suppose, or as big as it is now. And they weren't really going for that, because, who would make the tea or all this ridiculousness. So I just didn't go back. And I just started dating my husband. And I think he gave me, because him being a designer, was just like, that is not right. You shouldn't have to put up with that. And he gave me the encouragement, to just not go back. So I just didn't go back, didn't go in again. But I just felt that they didn't even deserve a goodbye or a notice period. That's how poorly I was treated. And since heard other women had gone into that agency and had a similar experience, or just people having similar experiences within the design industry itself, with it being quite a male-orientated industry, graphic design specifically, I mean.
That's interesting. Okay.
So I left that and then went to work for a really sweet little shop, Rad Studio in Saltaire. The woman who owned it at the time was living in London and working for an advertising agency, and she needed someone to just look after it for her.
Wow, that's a juggle.
Yeah, I know, right? So she was running it, and then I think she went through like a break or something like that. So she went back down to London, but still had the shop and just wanted to keep it for as long as she could. So I worked there for like a year or so. And it was really nice because she was down there, so I didn't really have a manager, so to speak. She just left me to look after things, and I just learned a lot about having a shop and bringing new supply in and all that kind of stuff, like understanding wholesale, and it was lovely.
The perfect training.
It was really nice. It was really lovely. And basically what happened was she ended up having to sell her business because obviously it was too much for her being in London. So she sold it, and then I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do now? Because I'm definitely not going back to working like in agencies. So I put together a like 10-page document of like why my family should invest in me.
Okay. That is so thorough.
No, it was really probably a bit too much, but I was like, I just wanted to really prove myself that I could be responsible to have a business. I suppose I'd never done it before. Yeah. And it was 25. So I put together this document, and it was Johnny's mum actually who gave me £5,000, invested in my business plan because she thought it could work. And so I set up a shop in Skipton with £5,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I love hearing like the real kind of like the nitty gritty of how things come about.
Yeah.
And it's so confident of you as well to have that belief of like, right, I'm going to write it all out, and I'm going to offer this out, and because I believe in myself, and this is why you should invest in me. That's so fantastic.
Definitely. And it was, I mean, it's not like it was a massive business plan or anything. It was, there was a lot of details missing out at that point because I wasn't 100% sure on some things. Like I'd never taken out a business rental lease before or anything like that, and didn't understand like small business really, like all the stupid little things that creatives don't really think about until it comes down to it.
Yeah.
So 5,000 does not go far.
Oh God, no.
In terms of setting up a shop, I learned quite quickly, but it wasn't enough to get me a little space within a place called Highcorn Mill in Skipton. This little mill, the footfall was horrendous because it was the cheapest thing I could find in Skipton. But we started marketing on Instagram, and that was the way that we brought people off the high street, round the corner, up the road into this tiny little mill.
So it became like a destination shop.
It was definitely a destination shop. Unless you were going beneath me, I think was like a carpet shop. I can't remember what was there. A hairdresser, and there was a framer there. So some people came to get artwork framed, which was helpful downstairs. Yeah, he was nearby, and then upstairs was just like offices. So it wasn't.
Wow, so it wasn't even like a vibrant, hubbub of creative shops. It was very practical.
No, and the difference. Hebden Bridge is a lot different to Skipton as well. Yeah. Like Skipton. So the long and short is we set up in that small space. I ended up having a leak from the roof on Christmas Eve. On the first year I'd opened, so 2016, ruined loads of stock. But the owner of the building actually owned quite a lot of property in Skipton. So then he moved me into a really nice shop at the same price.
At the same price?
The same price.
So that leak was actually the best thing that could have happened.
It was a brilliant leak. We closed, I think I had to close for about 3 weeks. So I missed like some of the Christmas trade, but we had an online shop, so that covered me. And then by the end of January, we had like a proper shop somehow.
Oh, wow.
And that's where we stayed for a couple of years. But I mean, without that opportunity, even with having that opportunity and being able to move into the new space, it was like retail. Having a shop on the high street is a very difficult thing to do, especially when you're selling things that are particularly niche. Yeah. But it was lovely. It was just a really nice experience to have that and have somewhere to come and do workshops. and people would come, would drive over from different places because Skipton's a nice place to go for a walk, and people would come out for the day just to see us and have a chat and look around the shop and then go for a nice walk or some lunch. So it was the people that came in were really what made it. They were just nice, like-minded, friendly people that we didn't really get any, like idiots coming in or anything. It was just nice environment.
Oh, lovely. So it kind of it had its own community, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And that's was what, and still is really missing from Skipton. And because I hadn't lived in Skipton before, Johnny's from just outside of Skipton. So it seemed like a logical place to open the shop. I didn't want to open it in Saltaire because, I didn't want to tread on the toes of the woman who just bought this business I used to work for. So was letting her do what I think. I was like, right, we'll go off somewhere else and we'll try and make it work somewhere else. And Skipton is a really beautiful place. It's an old market town, and it kind of attracts a certain type of person. So you get lots of older ladies coming in for coach trips and having tea and going for walks, and it's that kind of place. It's a really lovely place, but it doesn't have the vibrancy of Hebden Bridge, the creative side of things. It's a market town for farmers and all the lovely people that live there, but It's not, I wouldn't say it's not a creative place like Saltaire is or Hebden Bridge is. Yeah. So we actually struggled quite a lot. So at the weekends we would get people coming who would drive over to see us because they were wanting a day out. Mm-hmm. And then there was a handful of people that would come during the week who actually lived in the area but would commute into Leeds for work or wherever, who were similar to us, I suppose, who were living out there because they just loved being in the countryside.
Yeah.
But so it was hard. It was a bit of a slog. We kind of got a lot of our trade from online because of having a bit of an audience on Instagram, and we made that work for a period of time. And as I mentioned to you before, on the last Christmas that we were opened is when my dad passed away quite suddenly. And then that kind of was just like, enough, if you know what I mean. I was like, I can't bother do this anymore. I need a change.
Yeah, I can imagine that because I've often thought, my shop is purely online and I don't have the overheads.
Yeah.
To turn a profit as well as covering your overheads, your insurance, it's just it's huge. So it just becomes pointless. It's we were always breaking even. We weren't losing any money. We weren't really making any money. Yeah, it was just every month breaking even. Like Johnny still, he had no participation at the shop. He was just doing his own thing. So he ultimately was just paying for everything, the rent and bills and stuff, because everything that I was turning over was just going back into the shop. So you have to draw a line, don't you? Yeah. You're paying to run a business in that case.
Yeah, exactly. And unless you're it's exciting at the beginning because you're enjoying it, because it's new. In the first year you're thinking, right, okay, break even first year, next year I can make a bit more money. But when that kind of keeps on rolling into just nothing really evolving, it's the pleasure of doing it kind of gets slapped away a little bit. And it was never about making a lot of money, but you still need to make some money. You still need to afford to live.
Yeah, you need to eat, you need to pay a mortgage or rent or whatever. Yeah. And so when your dad passed, what, like you said, you just felt like you needed a change and everything with the business. Did you have an idea of what that change was going to be? What you wanted to focus on?
No, not at all, to be honest. It was totally unexpected when he died. He wasn't like a bill of health by any means. He liked to smoke a cigar and drink red wine. He wasn't running marathons at 64, but it was a shock. He'd been with us at Christmas, and then he literally left our house on like the 2nd of January and died on the 5th of January at home. So it was just like, what has just happened, sort of thing. I couldn't, and because we were very, very close, because we shared this like affinity with being creative. I would say probably closer to him than I am with my mum. it was a bit of a, like, even through the business of having the shop, I would ring my dad. I'm getting this artist in, what do you think of this? Or I'm going to do this workshop, how do you think I should do this? Because he had the answers. He was a really good person to kind of just work stuff out with. So I felt a bit lost, and I carried on with the shop. And I think this was what was paying the ass. I just paid, I think this was actually the Christmas I did make a bit of money from selling bloody moccasin slippers. They were like, oh my God, I'm just going to turn into a slipper seller. That was like, this is where this business is going. But I put all that money back into the shop for this whole like new shop fit. And then that happened. So I was like, right, I'm going to need to open the shop because I've just spent all this money and we'll just see how it goes because it looks nice and everything. But, you know, the intention wasn't there to close right away. Mm-hmm. And I just like, if you've obviously experienced grief, just having people coming in the shop and being like, why were you closed for 2 weeks? Why was it? I just couldn't, my ability to have a filter to say, oh, I'm really sorry, something happened at home. I was like, my dad died. I found it really difficult to communicate with other people at that point. And I was like, I can't work in a shop. Like, my shop's I'm not going to lose all my customers because I can't like socialize at the moment. Yeah. And I can't afford to bring someone in to work in the shop at that time of year because people aren't really spending money at that time of year anyway. Mm-hmm. So the decision kind of came around that, really.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you said that, because I remember that vividly after losing our baby Alma. I'd blurt things out. I felt like I almost wanted to shock people. Yeah. I don't know if I wanted to shock them. I just wanted them to, I don't know, to feel something or to not. I don't know. Like, I would tell people, like, if people asked if we had kids, I'd say we well, yeah, our daughter just died, and you know, and that wasn't really fair of me to put that on people, but it was, that's interesting that you just said that you kind of blurt it out, because I kind of went through the same thing, and I guess it's part of processing it, isn't it? Because
and I think when you feel something so deeply, mm-hmm. and someone is, like you said, you almost do want them to feel that feeling just for a moment. You're like, how can you not understand what this is? Yeah. Like, so you end up just saying something, or it's and then you kind of have to be careful about that as well, because you can end up turning people away. And
because I mean, if you're doing it then in your business, that's
it's like, whoa, okay, she needs to be by herself for a while. Definitely. And it was that, like, I totally, and you might relate to this, well, I just ended up isolating myself quite a period of time. It was quite, all of it was very unfortunate time, and I mean, anyone died, it's never well timed, is it? But we were due to get married in the May. So he died in the January, and we were getting married in the May. Oh God. And that was just like, fuck, I was like, you know, like, even inviting people, and like the politics of having who do you invite, who do you not invite, and then everything just felt like a massive task. Like, it took away the pleasure of getting married, I suppose, because I didn't really want to see all my facts. So then you're reminded, aren't you, of someone that's not there. So it was a hard few, well, I wouldn't even say a few months, I would say like hard couple of years. I've definitely am a lot more content with things now. 100%. It's been just been 4 years now.
Wow. And grief doesn't ever really end. You just learn to live with it in different ways, I think, and it revisits you in unexpected ways, and I guess you just maybe sometimes meet it in different ways, because we still experience it, and then sometimes I'll suddenly think, oh, I've not thought about that for for a few weeks or for a few days, and then sometimes I can't stop thinking about it, and there's no particular reason. It just kind of pops up, or like I've noticed that I'm behaving in particular ways, and it just becomes part. I guess their presence in your life is just different. That's
100% it, isn't it? It's like you if you're really busy, you might not necessarily be thinking about things. There might be little lulls of time where you allow yourself to think about it because you feel like in an okay place to think about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I guess it's hard, like grief is difficult, I suppose, you know, different way people die and how old people are and stuff like that. I suppose with my dad, you know, he was a good age. Like the way I think about it now is just it was a shock, but he was 64, he had a good life, he was still quite young and he's missed a lot, but you know, he still had the opportunity to live. So
yeah,
like I only think about him now with fondness, and it's, you know, I don't start crying right away. You know, like when you first lose someone, you can't even talk about them at all. So it's like I've come a little bit full circle, and I'm sure in 5 years I might be completely different again.
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, of course. And I guess those are the things, aren't they, that often, like you said, they instigate life changes. Deaths have so many different knock-on effects in some ways, I think, and they can really alter, by someone not being there anymore, can really alter your life path. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened.
That's 100% what happened. Because, like I was saying before, so not being really able to sit and draw for periods of time, I wasn't really in the right mindset to go looking for a job at an agency because that, you know, I needed space. But you have to find something, you still have to find something to do. You know, we're not in a position to just be taking 2 years out of work or whatever and hope that everything will be all right. So I just ended up we bought our first house, and because of that, we had a small amount of space at the front and back of our house to do some gardening. And I just started experimenting with going outside and sowing seeds and going round to my mother-in-law's house, who's a biologist, so she knows a lot about growing. And we just spent hours and hours and hours reading books about cultivating land. I just found it absolutely fascinating, and it was the one thing that took me away from everything. I found it really peaceful. I wasn't distracted. It was like the first time in my life that I just wasn't distracted by it. I could go out in the garden and spend 6 hours there. I think because I'm moving my body a bit as well, and you're not just sat down. But in terms of tasks, I'd never in my life been able to do something for a whole day without wanting to do something else. So growing, like, pretty much evolved from there, growing flowers, and the reward you have from growing flowers, it's all very cathartic.
I guess, you know, in the cycle of nature, it's life. You're creating life in a way, and that feels quite kind of symbolic as well, coming after your dad's death, and then you're kind of returning to this like really quite primal thing of earth and planting, and then seeing that grow, and there's something really just very true and simple about it.
Yeah, and I think it is that simplicity. Really, there was, you know, it's the most. I can't really know how to describe it. I can't even describe how I feel when I'm out, just like digging around in dirt for a few hours. Or like, I think everyone who grows plants in, you know, vegetables, flowers, whatever it is, it's like the anticipation of something growing out from the soil that you've put in there.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just incredible. It's exciting, and it keeps you on track because it's all seasonal. So, you know, you're doing something, but you know, in a couple of months that's going to appear. And so you can look forward. There's always something to look forward to, even if it's next year. Already I'm thinking, okay, I can't grow that this year because I haven't yet set up this. So next year I'm going to do this. It's just, yeah, it's given me so much. It's grounded me so much, I would say. And when, you go through a big change in life, that's exactly what you need. You need something to bring you back down to earth, quite literally, and to focus on, to distract you from everything. And because I became so obsessed with it, literally obsessed, I ended up actually being all right at it. And I was like, all right, I can keep plants alive, and I find it quite natural to be able to do that. So, like everything that I've ever done in life, how can I turn this into a business? How can I do this forever?
Yeah. How can you make it your daily work?
Exactly. How can we turn this into something? And that's exactly where Common Daisy came about. So I'd been reading about plants and floristry for a long time anyway, through having the shop and stuff. We used to sell a lot of books about floristry, and we'd have people come in to do workshops, like brief workshops and all them kind of things. So it's always been an interest creatively. But then this new side of things that have opened up to actually be doing it physically just completely changed things. So I'm like, that's just brilliant. You can move around, you don't have to sit down. I can dig for 8 hours. I can, and there's so much variety of jobs to do. It's like never ending. There's literally the passion from I hope it's coming through right now, because I'm getting excited talking about it.
Really is.
It's like right now we're sowing seeds, okay, and next week we're going to be setting up the raised beds for the flower field, and the week after that we'll be doing the polytunnel, but then after that we need to be potting on. Like this, it's not one task. So like we were saying before about the shop wearing different hats, it's like that in a way, but way broader, and you get outside, you can, you don't have to be dealing with the public every day. There's obviously an element of that with doing weddings and meeting brides and all the lovely side of things, but it's not every day. You're not bogged down with taking phone calls and sitting on emails and doing the admin side of things. That's a really small part of the business. It's great, honestly.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear you talking about it. It's beautiful.
I just love it.
So you literally started growing in your backyard and like the space at the front of your house, and then did you manage to find a plot of land to expand?
So we're literally growing out of raised beds at the front and back of the house, and just trying out different plants really, and I've taken this time to understand how certain cut flowers grow, so it's been quite a good time to just learn that process without having to waste thousands of seeds doing it in a larger scale. And then I had a little plot in Hebden Bridge before I had my plot here. My friend Ruby, her dad has like a little bit of a community garden thing going on over there, so he gave me a little plot there. So I did like my first spring season of tulips over there, where I grew like 500 tulips just to trial it out, and then sold all those not last year, the year before lockdown basically, so whenever that was, 2020, that was like the first spring that I tried with that, and that was really popular. So that kind of fueled the fire to keep going with it and finding a bit more land, and that's when eventually, it took a long time to get any land sorted out over in Howifers when I got my plot here, and continued growing really. But it's a mission. It's the issue with growing is, unless you have a big garden, money because you own land, or access to it, it is really difficult for people to access, to be able to do. And it's taken, like 3 years, 4 years? Well, about 3 years for me to get that plot in Haworth, of really like trying, emailing the parish council all the time, asking for an allotment when I could see unused ones. And the frustration of like, I could do something with that. I just really need to get my hands on that. It is really frustrating. And the industry of, cut flower growing in this country, or just horticulture, and it's very elite. It's, for white middle class people, it's quite a pretentious kind of industry, I guess. Gardening industry is totally different, I suppose, but going into more horticulture and doing it as a business has been quite a funny thing to get into.
Yeah. Often like kind of older moneyed people, isn't it, as well, often?
Yeah, well, that's definitely it. I mean, we never in a million years thought that we would be able to buy any land, and even the land that we are getting hold of it's a complicated leasehold because half of it is a graveyard for a start.
Wow.
No. So it's an acreage and half is a graveyard. The property we're buying is like the old house that looked after the graveyard. So whoever lived in there, the people that would look after the Sunday school and the graveyard lived in this house, basically.
Oh, right. God, I didn't even know that was a thing, that there would be specific people to look after a graveyard.
Oh, right. So this building, this house that the church still owns now, the Methodist Church over in Lake Oxford, just over the valley from us, they're selling off a lot of properties at the moment because they're, losing money. They need to recoup finances because people don't go to church in the same way as they used to do and all these kinds of things. So they're selling off a lot of very unusual properties, I suppose, at the moment, like with really weird leaseholds and stuff. But if you're someone like us who likes a project, it's quite a good way of getting your foot in the door and trying something out, I suppose.
Yeah.
So we found this, Johnny found this property and was like, this is exactly what you're looking for, isn't it? It was like this absolutely knackered house, but with a load of land. I was like, that's the one. That's the one for us.
Wow. Was that just an estate agent?
It was listed with like an estate agent who I suppose specialises in more unique like land,
right?
Selling of land, I suppose, and houses. But so the property itself is freehold that we're buying, but it's absolutely knackered. Like it's nothing to be desired at the moment. It's going to take a lot of doing to get it up to scratch. But what we can see is the potential in the land that is leasehold that comes with it. So the leasehold is for like 999 years for peppercorn rent. But we have to look after the graveyard. So it's an old,
you just say peppercorn rent?
Yeah, so there's no money exchanged. But
it's a brilliant expression.
It is, isn't it? I was like, do we physically have to give you a peppercorn? I can.
Oh wow! So it's just that it's not yours, but you don't have to pay rent, but you can.
Yeah. So it's tied to the freehold property that we're buying. So you wouldn't be able to buy. So even when we go to sell our house in the future, whoever we sell our house to will have to take on the leasehold and the graveyard. So it's a very unique setup. Yeah. So it is a long-term thing because I don't know how many people would want to do that, to be honest. But because the reason it wasn't being sold was because property developers couldn't build on the land next to the graveyard because to the church it's still sacred land. They don't want any like solid structures being built on it.
Okay, yeah.
So property developers are like, well, I'm not interested then. This is a waste of time. And unless you're really into gardening, or you have a horse, I'm trying to think or something like that, or whatever, you have a small holding, it doesn't really appeal to many people.
Yeah, and I can imagine people also feeling maybe a bit iffy about a graveyard in their garden.
Well, definitely, it's not for everyone. And because we've covered the topic of grief, we're not that. It doesn't freak us out too, it doesn't weird us out too much, all that side of things. And it is actually a very beautiful, landscape. So the graveyard is onto the right-hand side of the land, and it's got like a tree line, and the graves that are there are ranging from ones from like the 1800s up until probably the 1950s at most.
Right.
And they're actually really beautiful structures and tombs.
I love a good graveyard.
It's a good one. You'd like this one. It is a nice graveyard. It's a very old villagey, churchy graveyard, if that's a description.
Yeah, perfect Agatha Christie style.
Yeah, very exactly like that. So it's actually quite. And when we went to view the house, it did look a bit spooky the other week. I can't lie. When we went back to do some measurements, but when we went to view it in July last year, everything was in full bloom. So the trees were full.
Oh.
The sun was shining over the valley, and it all just looked really beautiful. And there's still tons of space for what will become the flower field. So that for us was like a no-brainer because, like I said, there would never be, unless we won the lottery, I can't foresee how we would ever be able to buy a property with land, because property's gone up so much anyway.
Yeah.
So that would just be near impossible. And I'd rather live in a caravan and buy the field than buy the house. So it was a bonus that this came with any sort of property, to be honest.
It's brilliant. Such a wonderful find.
Yeah, it was a good one. And it was really serendipitous how it all happened, because it was on the market for more than what we could afford anyway. So, and plus it was like last July, so there was still a lot of, like, Johnny had been taken out furlough for being self-employed because of the pandemic and all those kind of things. So just moving mortgages and getting new ones is a very difficult thing at the moment.
Yeah.
So when we went to see it, we were like, well, we'll just give them a really cheeky offer, because who's going to buy this, really? Because it is a bit of a dump. Let's face it, the house is a bit of a dump and you can't do anything with the land. So they're going to take a while to sell it. So we'll just put in a really cheeky offer and then maybe it'll come up something. So we offered 25,000 less than the asking price.
Wow.
In writing. And initially they were like, obviously, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but we'll let the church know, sort of thing. And that was back in July last year. And then by September, they emailed us being like, do you want to come back? And we're like, yeah, we thought this might happen. And so it all went from there. And then we took family around, and because you have to go, you have to see, you'll have to come over and see it, obviously. Because you need to see it to feel the vibe, to get what we're doing, because I've explained this to so many other people, and I've taken my mum round now and my sister and a couple of friends, and they've all been like, the way you described it, I just couldn't get my head around it. But now that I've been, it's like, I totally get it.
Yeah. I mean, I've just from photos, I'm so excited. Because I was thinking, like, yeah, you put in an offer for 25,000 less, but also I bet they must love what you're going to be doing with it, because as you said, it's still classed as sacred ground and you're going to be growing blooms. It's going to be so beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we had to, as part of the kind of proposal, well, it wasn't we gave an offer and it was accepted, but they did need to know more about what we would do with the land. So we had to, like I did with Maud's house, put together a 10-page document proposal of images and just a bit about the business, because it's a small village, so they want to know how much, how many more people are going to come to the village if you're going to be doing pick your own days into the flower field and all them kind of things, like, are we going to get congestion of cars and all these things that small villages ask. So we had to put together a document to kind of explain it a bit and say, actually, it's a lot more low-key than that. Brides will be coming every now and then. Yes, we'll do pick your own days, but it's going to be limited to maybe like 15 people in a day. It's not going to be a circus. And they were just really impressed with everything that we want to achieve with it, and we're just totally on board. And even now, so we're having to have more surveys done on the house, because the house was built in 1875, I think, and it hasn't been occupied for 10 years. So there's just more issues seem to be occurring. So we will be having even more money taken off what we're going to pay for it. Right. But the church are aware of that. They're on board with it still, because they're just saying, like, well, we want you here now.
Yeah.
And it's just a really nice situation, a buying situation to be in, because we're going snail pace, but actually we know it's not, unless someone drops out from buying our house, of course, and we need to relist our house, it feels like a nice buying situation to be in anyway.
Yeah, that sounds like a really kind of lovely community sale in a way.
Yeah,
they now want you to be there, and you've actually got a relationship with them. That's lovely.
Yeah, no, it is. And the one of the priests who, none of our family, well, apart from my mum's side of the family, but none of Johnny's family, our family that are over in Yorkshire, are religious anyway. But the priest lives over in the same village that Johnny's parents live, and whenever his parents go walking the dogs, they bump into the priest talks to them about how excited he is for us to be there, and it's really cute. I'm like, oh God, no pressure now.
That's a really long-term project, isn't it? On every level.
Yes, it is.
Both business and home.
Yeah, and that's it. I feel like I've just come to a really natural point of like, that is what I want to do. It's a really nice feeling to know what you want to do for the rest of your life, like to enjoy something so much.
Yeah.
And it just excites me. And I know that I've done lots of things in the past, but I can, like Johnny has a real sense that I mean it. Like he can see that I really, really, he's like, I've never seen you happier than this. Like you're just mental for growing flowers. Like you just love it so much. And I just feel like it's just so rewarding compared to anything else we've done before. So why wouldn't you want to do that forever,
Yeah.
So it's just, I can see how our family would fit into living there, and it's just a really nice. We feel very lucky to be in the position to be able to do it anyway.
Yeah, and what a beautiful childhood for Magnus.
I know. I'm a little bit concerned that he's going to be making friends on the graveyard.
Well, I was thinking he's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, Halloween is going to be so on point around your house.
Oh my God, I know. But like, that's the only thing, if he comes back and has like an invisible friend who he only sees out on the field. It's something really strange. But, oh God. I don't think I'll be out cutting flowers in the evenings or anything like that, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's just like, we just want him to have the best life possible. And Johnny had a really beautiful upbringing in the countryside, and I had a lovely upbringing, don't get me wrong, but I lived in the town centre of Blackburn, and there was a lot of things that we didn't have access to, which Magnus will, and that's a really nice feeling to have been able to provide that for him.
No, it's idyllic.
Yeah. You're gonna be a proper little country bumpkin.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so lovely to, like you said, just hear how passionate and how content you are with what you found. And I can really understand how it just fulfills so many aspects of your interests and your skills, and like you said, that you can move your body, but then it's also, there's the whole aesthetic of it, because you have such a strong eye and such a kind of like a really like a soft, beautiful, quite feminine aesthetic, and I guess to be creating florals, it's like, it is the ultimate creation, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's just ever evolving, and there's just so many tasks that you can do. If one day you can't be bothered going out because it's raining, all right, we'll take photos that day, or there's always something different, and it's just exciting. And everyone's briefs in terms of like brides are different, different venues. So yeah, again, you've got those to look forward to in the calendar in the month, because that gets you away from just being at home. I just can't fault any area of it. And I think if more people had access to be able to grow, more people would be just. The reason that you don't know many people do it is just because, what is that starting point? Like, you need an allotment or you need a garden to be able to get going with it. And part of the focus actually of setting up the farm is I really am passionate about bringing people in and just having an opportunity to experience it, even if it's for a day, or bringing children in to learn to do a bit of growing in the polytunnel, through the local school or through different schools in Keighley, because the house is very much on the edge of quite a poor area, and no one should be denied the access to be able to learn to grow. And if anyone shows an interest in culture, I'd more than welcome them to come and spend some time on the field.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow, that's lovely. That's so lovely. I'm really excited. So what's the name? Because you've changed the name, haven't you, from Common Daisy?
Oh yeah, I will stick with this one. Again, it's part of the what's she like? should we create a new brand? Because we can. No, we've changed it. So because it was church owned, we've changed it to Honour Farm because we just felt like that was very fitting with the history of the land.
Honour Farm Flowers, that's a beautiful name.
Yeah, so Johnny is, of course, working on a rebrand at the moment. He has a nice brief that he's been left with, like he's been chipping away at. So I don't know when that'll all be ready, to be honest. I would have thought like at the end of spring, perhaps. So yeah, and then that I will stay with that name. That will be it. It'll be what the house is called. It will not change again.
I mean, yeah, you're going to be there for a while now, aren't you? So.
You know, I was saying about inviting people to come who might be interested in growing, but the same for artists and, you know, like yourselves, you and Laurie, just having a space to come if you want to do some drawing that's just a little bit different, and maybe even doing like artist retreat type situations, or just as you can imagine, my brain is just like bubbling away, like, what can we do? What can we do? Should we do this? Should we do that? But it'll be a long time in the making, and it'll evolve into whatever it will be. So the next few years will be very experimental, I imagine, with just testing, because, you know, I do need to turn this into a proper business, because we are buying, you know, it's a big investment buying a property anyway, so we have to make it work. So there'll be a lot of trial and error in terms of what it is that we fixate ourselves on in the future, whether that's doing less weddings and just more of the growing side of things to supply to florists and other people, or whether, you know, maybe the wedding side things takes off more, or who knows. Just lots of time to figure that out.
Oh wow. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. It's just so inspiring and lovely, and it's so interesting talking to you as well, because you do have so many skills and you're so talented. You could literally, like, you've been successful at everything that you've done because you are so incredibly talented, and you've also got a really clear business mind. You know, you can write 10-page documents, which is part of the, you know, which is a huge part of it as well.
I think, without, you definitely need some, a relatively level head in terms of business, I think, to just make anything. But it's always about how can you make something you love doing into something that you do every day, you know. And that has, because I've never wanted to go back to, you know, working in agencies, that's just always been the way you have to approach everything that you do. So if you can do that, like exactly like how you have done with your beautiful online shop and your illustrations and stuff, then why not?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting because I guess coming back to grief, like a big part of I think me starting this was when Alma, when we lost her, and I was just like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm sat at a desk and I'm not, you know, working for somebody else. No, it was a lovely job, and I really enjoyed the people that I worked with and the actors that we worked with, and my boss was lovely, and I was really lucky in that sense. But it was kind of a real wake-up call of just like, you've just got to do all the things that you've been thinking about and pondering on for years. Just bloody do them.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, and at that point you're thinking, well, the worst thing is I'll just come back here, right? So
I think that's it. It's like when you're kind of starting from scratch, it's like, well, we'll just give it a go and see where it goes, and then it doesn't have to be fixed. You just kind of like figure out, like you said, you know, it will be what it will be. It will organically transform into whatever it is. And I never set out really to have a shop, but the different interests and different skills that I had just ended up kind of presenting this as a natural progression, I suppose. And I'm sure, you know, it's going to carry on evolving and carry on changing. And I guess being open to that, and that just because I really, you know, I think it's really interesting what you're talking about, your illustration about, you know, just because you're great at it doesn't mean that it's something that you need to pursue. And I guess that's a really important part of listening to yourself and being truly creative, is leaning into what it is that you love. And that led, in your case, to growing flowers.
Yeah, 100% that. And like that, and it is that for any career that you do, isn't it? If just because my lean on was illustration for someone else that might be working in finance and they're dreaming of escaping to something else, or it doesn't matter what it is. I think you need to be a little bit fearless as well, like you were to be brave to try something new. And just take a bit of a leap of faith. If you're in the position to be able to do that, and just see how it goes.
Experiment and play, and exactly, see where it goes. Oh, it's been so gorgeous talking to you. What a lovely way to start my week. Thank you.
Oh, you too.
You can find Hattie on Instagram at honourfarmfolk, or you can head to her website commondaisy.co.uk. On the date of publishing this episode, the site is currently under maintenance, but the site explains how you can get in touch with Hattie for wedding bookings. Thank you so much for listening to On the Irregular. Please make sure you review and subscribe, as it helps other listeners find us. It truly does make such a difference.